Welcome to the Ready Room Podcast. I am Josh, and today we're going to be talking about chassis versus bedded stocks. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, so another solo podcast episode today. Wife is still, with child, so hopefully our child, I'm not going to say the gender, will be born very soon. Looking at within the week or maybe week and a half. And today I am doing bedded stocks versus chassis solo. We are hoping to have some guests soon, working around everyone else's schedule best we can. Today is also the first time, I think it's the first time we are doing this in a recorded fashion instead of live stream fashion. It just kind of, it didn't really make sense with the live stream viewership we were getting on YouTube to keep doing it and really worrying about that schedule. So if the need and the call for it actually shows up as viewership increases, then maybe we'll bring it back. I would actually really like to keep it as a live stream podcast and then record it for the podcast sites. But until the desire and the request for it rises, we're going to do a recorded from here on out. So no more 6:30 live streams on YouTube. Anyways, we were getting way more listens on the podcast sites than on YouTube to begin with, and that's fine. I expected that. So we're gonna keep pushing, keep doing this podcast. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast sites, I really do appreciate you guys because you're really helping out. I'm seeing almost double the downloads every month. So it looks like every month we're doubling our downloads, which is awesome. That's growth, and I really appreciate you guys. If you're showing your friends, thank you so much. If you do like the podcast, and if you think that we are providing valuable information for the firearms community and helping out each other, because I really think we should be really helping each other out across the firearms community and gunsmithing. By the way, I'm really hoping to reach out to some gunsmiths very soon. Want to get that ball rolling on showcasing gunsmiths across America, if that's possible. It's a dying trade, so I want to reach out and get that another like a mini series going on. But if you do like what we're doing and you feel like we've earned the listen that you give, which we really appreciate, please leave a review on Spotify if they let you. I can't remember if Spotify does anymore or does now. Google Podcast, Apple, anywhere where you're listening to the podcast, if you're able to leave a review, please leave it. It would really, really help out the podcast. It's actually the number one way to help out podcasts. Share it with your friends if you have friends who you think might enjoy it. If you're on YouTube, if you do happen to see us on YouTube, which is a very small percentage of our listeners / watchers, drop a like, subscribe if you don't mind. If you want to keep seeing it, maybe hit the notification bell, see when a new video comes up. I am working on some actual videos besides podcast videos. It's just taking some time to get set up for everything. It's a different world. This is a very static show, and the videos we're going to do later are not going to be static. So that is coming in the future. Expect that. Today is actually another gunsmithing, more gunsmithing focused episode, and it's not for gunsmiths. It's to help you understand some things that gunsmiths offer. So bedded stocks or a chassis system, what's going to work for you? And the reason I felt like doing this episode is because a lot of services that gunsmiths provide and have been providing for decades and decades, they're starting to be seen by the average person as being out of date. And I can see where that's coming from on some practices, but the majority of these practices and services are not actually out of date, they're out of fashion. Those are two different things. Out of date would mean that they're irrelevant or they're obsolete, and neither one of those things are true. They're just not thought of as often in the general community, right? And so bedding a stock is one of those services that I think is very underappreciated nowadays, and the chassis system is one of the reasons that a lot of people see bedding as outdated. But we're gonna break down today the differences between the two, the pros and cons, and what the two products / services seek to achieve. So we're going to start off with, what is the purpose of bedding a rifle or buying a chassis? Like, why would you do one of those two things? Well, bedding a stock and changing the stock out for a chassis system, they both seek to achieve the exact same goal: giving the barreled action, which is your rifle, your action or receiver plus your barrel, giving the barreled action a solid and consistent surface to return to after firing. This consistent surface to return to increases overall accuracy and consistency, which is the most important part of bedding or buying a chassis. It's mostly for the consistency. And the reason why is, when a firearm fires, the entire thing flexes. And no matter what you think, no matter what anybody tells you, aluminum flexes and so does steel. Okay, it flexes. There's a lot of force being generated when you fire, and that energy has to go somewhere. And if you don't think that steel flexes a lot, go watch a slow motion video of a barrel when it fires. It whips. Okay, there's barrel harmonics, and that barrel does flex, as well as the action, as well as whatever system it's sitting in, whether that's a stock or a chassis. Everything flexes when it fires. So in a soft stock, whether that's wood, fiberglass, synthetic, and I'm not saying soft as in fiberglass is very soft. It's soft compared to, aluminum, right? In the soft stock, the barreled action most likely won't return to this exact same position as where it was before you fired, okay? And what you're doing when you're bedding the rifle or getting a chassis, you're trying to give this firearm a smooth and consistent surface to return to in the exact same position every time it fires, okay? And you'll hear, well, I'll get to that later, but that's what you're looking for, is you're looking to that consistent return to the same position. These two options are for if your rifle isn't giving you quite exactly the level of precision you're looking for, but it's pretty good, or if you're just looking to bump it up a little bit, Some rifles take really well to bedding, as in, there's a dramatic increase. Same thing with the chassis. Some systems, some rifles see a very big improvement on accuracy or precision, however you want to see it. I mean, I know the difference, but it's kind of hard to split the difference in this specific conversation. And these two options aren't the best idea for someone who has a rifle that can't hit the broadside of a barn, right? If your rifle is hitting like 5 MOA for some reason, there's something wrong outside of the stock itself. If it's that bad, you're looking at barrel problems or receiver problems, or the mating of the barrel to the receiver not being proper. Often you'll see burrs or flakes or cuts in the crown, which is the muzzle end of the barrel. If that's not a smooth surface, then it doesn't matter how good your action is, because the crown is the very last surface the barrel or the bullet touches before leaving the barrel. So that is really, really important for accuracy. You could have a $2,000 action / receiver, whatever you want to call it, and a Bart line barrel. But if whoever installed it didn't put a proper crown on there, and you've got a burr in the bore at the muzzle end, you're going to have an issue. You're going to have inconsistency. You're going to have inaccuracy. That's the heart of your accuracy, is your receiver and your barrel and the way they interface, right? If they're not machined properly, you're going to have issues. That's why buying a commercial rifle can often seem kind of not sketchy, but inconsistent, because with a lot of the bare bones stock rifles across the board, they may be good rifles, especially in design. Like, the design might be great, but if quality control allows for a wide range of tolerances in the machining process, plus or minus, X amount of, let's just say, for example, if the machining processes in the receiver or the barrel or both allows for plus or minus 0.010 of an inch of leeway either way, that's going to lead to issues, okay? What you're looking for for that precision from the rifle is, plus or minus 1. Like that's it. That's not much, right? But that lends itself to accuracy. So you don't want to buy a chassis for a rifle that's shooting 5 MOA. That's not where your issue lies. Your issue lies in something with the receiver or the barrel. So if you've got a rifle that's doing well and you think you can slightly improve it, or just improve it at all. I'm not going to say slightly because I have seen some go from like 2 MOA to sub MOA. Okay, I've seen improvements that are pretty drastic. But those are in rare examples, and I'll get into why they're rare here in a minute. These two options, the chassis system or a pillar bedding job, all these do are remove possible causes of inaccuracy, right? So it's not adding accuracy to your rifle. It's not if we're talking about the purest form of where this accuracy comes from, it's not giving the rifle more accuracy or precision, however you want to think about this to help you along. What it's doing is removing factors that could lead to inaccuracy, okay? Because like I just said a minute ago, the accuracy of your firearm actually comes from how well the receiver and the barrel are machined and how well they interface, okay? How's that precision machining doing? Is it really, really good? Because the most accurate your rifle could ever be is if it was in some sort of vise contraption where there's no stock. It's just the barreled action and a trigger sitting in a vise that allows for zero movement. That's going to be the tightest group you ever get out of that rifle. Okay, and I'm not saying some vise you can just pull out at home. I mean, you'd have to design a really interesting setup where it locks that barreled action down with no stock, and every shot it moves 0%. I mean, there's no movement, and that'd be very, very hard to do. But that would be the most accurate your rifle ever is because the actual accuracy comes from the receiver and barrel. So what happens is your stock actually introduce the potential issues that can cause inconsistency or inaccuracy. And the same thing goes for a chassis, by the way, if it's not made properly. Don't think chassis are this new pure form of the better way to do stocks. They're just different, right? Because a chassis can be, they have machining processes. They can be messed up in the machining process. Quality control can miss something, and you might still have the same issues. What the stock does is it's giving you a way for you to hold it and a way for you to shoot it. Okay? But by doing that, it is now introducing possible factors of inaccuracy. Okay? So, what is a bedding job? Like, what is pillar bedding? Okay? Because you'll hear of bedding jobs as a couple different things. You'll hear glass bedding, pillar bedding, there's other names for it. But they all mean the same thing. What you're doing is you're filling the stock and part of the barrel channel with an epoxy or liquid nylon that hardens or liquid steel that hardens. There's all different kinds of products for this, guys. There's Acroglass, there's Devcon, there's Bedrock. There's all different kinds of products that are all compounds that mix together, and you put it in the stock, and it creates a hard, smooth, and consistent surface to mate to. So the way I like to explain it to people is think of it as you fitting the stock to your barreled action like a tight glove. Okay? You're taking this stock that fits, but it probably fits 90% of the way, and you're adding the last 10% of true contact that's giving a smooth, hard surface to mate to. 9 times out of 10, you're also using pillars, often made out of aluminum, that are bedded into the stock where your action screws pass through, so vertically. Think of these as like aluminum cylinders with a hole bored through them that are placed into the stock where your action screws go through. And now your action screws go through the pillars themselves instead of a hole bored through the wood or synthetic or fiberglass stock. These add rigidity and more consistent return when disassembling and reassembling your rifle, as well as some people talk about as if the action screws are recoil bearing, which action screws should not be recoil bearing. That's why you have a recoil lug in most bolt actions or some other form of recoil bearing surface built into or added to the action. That's a whole other conversation. We could have a whole podcast on what a recoil bearing surface is and why it's there. That's actually a very nerdy and complicated, not really complicated. It's actually, it seems simple, but there's a lot of that stuff that goes into it. And if you wanted to hear about that topic specifically, you can let us know. If not, I'm fine moving on. So you've got these pillars and this compound that you put in there. Often a bedding job also comes with the fact that you free float your rifle. And free floating means that you move any material out of the way so that the barrel is able to pass through the barrel channel of the stock without ever touching the stock. Your barrel is freely floating in the stock. It allows the barrel to flex as it needs to when firing, freeing up those barrel harmonics that we talked about earlier. Because like I said, barrels move. They whip when they fire. And if your stock is touching the barrel at some point, this actually prevents the barrel from doing what it needs to do and move freely. That also reduces accuracy. So it's not that the barrel was inaccurate, and it's not that the gun was inaccurate, it's that the stock touching the barrel introduced a new factor to that firearm that reduced accuracy, right? There are two different schools of thought with bedding as well. Because I said earlier that you fill up the stock with this compound, fills in all the voids and gaps. But there's two different schools of thought on how to actually apply this bedding compound inside the stock. Some gunsmiths say that you should apply the bedding compound all the way from the chamber support area. By the way, the chamber support area is that really thick part of your barrel that is where the chamber is, okay? It's the thickest portion of the barrel before it tapers down. And that is often supported by bedding compound. That's the only part of the barrel that's not free-floated. And then everything from that thick point forward is free-floated 99% of the time, okay? So some gunsmiths say you should apply the bedding compound from the chamber support area all the way back to the tang area of the stock and everything in between. So every void filled, if you take that barreled action out of the stock and you look at it, only the gaps where receiver doesn't need to touch anything, as in your action screw holes and the area for the trigger to pass through, everything else is like a solid, perfect, hard surface, right? That's one school of thought. And the other school of thought is only applying bedding area or bedding compound to the chamber support area, along with the recoil lug. Those are often, side by side. And then the tang area individually, nothing in between. So giving the tang, which is the back end of your receiver, by the way, giving the tang a nice solid surface to mate to, and then the recoil lug / chamber support area, a nice smooth, hard surface to mate to. I don't really want to get into the argument between those two schools of thought because I have been, I've had both explained to me in a calm and rational way. And I know someone who only believes in one exact method and does great as a gunsmith. And I know guys who do the exact opposite method and also do great as gunsmiths and put out good rifles. So I'm willing to bet that both work. I don't see the harm in either. I'm not going to say what I do. I know what I do. It doesn't matter what I do, unless you're my customer and you want to know. But if you're looking to get a bedding job done and you're curious what the difference in these two schools of thought would be, I just suggest research on your own. Ask some gunsmiths in person. When you bed a rifle, where do you put your bedding compound? I mean, it doesn't really matter to me unless you're my customer. It's just a difference in opinion. And you'll see a lot of that throughout the firearms community. They can be pretty spicy. But that's the general idea of a bedding job, guys. You're giving your receiver and part of your barrel, basically just the chamber area, a very smooth and hard surface to mate to. That way, every time you fire and everything flexes, remember the whole thing flexes when you fire, it's going to return to the exact same point every time. And consistency is key to accuracy. Okay, so that's the idea with a bedding job. So we're going to shoot over to the chassis system. This is actually a very easy question to answer. What is a chassis system? Okay, a chassis system is an often aluminum one-piece stock, or maybe two pieces, three pieces. Some have, removable stocks. Some, they're one piece, where, all the way from the fore end down to the stock is one piece of aluminum that has been machined very intricately and very precisely. But it's the idea of a chassis is have a large one-piece design, or maybe two-piece. Like I said, the whole piece thing doesn't matter. What matters is that it's precision machined. Okay, these things are solid aluminum most of the time. I have seen some that are alloys and different compounds, and some have some polymer mixed in, but most of them are like just hard aluminum. And a lot of times they're cut lightweight in the stock, where it's just a frame of a stock. That way it saves weight. But what you hope to get out of a chassis is a precision machined stock replacement. Okay. And the whole reason that you would get this is to achieve the exact same thing the bedding job does, which is a consistent and hard surface for your barreled action to sit in. Okay. Because if you look at a wooden stock that has had a pillar bedding job or a glass bedding job, whatever you want to call it, done to it, and you look inside of it, it's no longer wood that's touching the receiver. It's this bedding compound. Well, that's because you're looking for a hard surface. Well, if you go over to the chassis system, the entire inletted portion, the entire area where your receiver sits and mates to it, all the surfaces are aluminum. So it's the same thing. Like, the idea of what you're achieving with it is the same thing. The difference with chassis is that they're almost always made for precision rifle shooters or precision rifle firearms. They're designed to accommodate them as such. They're built already free-floated from the factory, and they're much harder than wooden or synthetic stocks because they're aluminum most of the time. They're very simple, and they're very easy to install your barreled action in, because it's basically just like swapping a stock. However, they are often extremely expensive, and I mean extremely expensive. Okay. One thing I forgot to mention in the bedding job portion of this was that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, people will incorporate aluminum into the bedding job. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have a really flexible stock. So maybe the bedding compound isn't enough. So a lot of times they'll inlet a aluminum bedding block. Think about it as just a cube of aluminum that is thin. Let's just say thin. It's probably not a cube. Cube probably isn't the correct term. But you're putting in a thin-ish. It's not like sheet metal thin, but it's not like, a pound of aluminum. You're inletting that into the wood, and then when you do your bedding job, it's inside the bedding compound. And often this is put near the recoil lug. That way you're guaranteeing a hard surface. And especially in synthetic stocks, where if it's a very, very flexible synthetic, because some are pretty rigid, like a hard plastic, and some are more rubbery, where the whole thing feels like you could twist it in half. In the softer ones, I've noticed a lot of companies are doing the synthetic stock where everything on the inside, all the internals, are aluminum. So it's almost like you're getting half and half. You're getting the classic rifle stock, but the internals might as well be similar to a chassis system, where they've inletted nothing but aluminum on the inside. It's neat. It seems like a lot of work to really want a synthetic stock, especially if it's that soft everywhere else. But I did forget to mention that in the bedding compound area. So I actually prefer not to bed the really soft synthetic stocks. I often propose to my customer, look, if they, I actually, speak of the devil, I just recently got a job rebarreling a Winchester Model 70. It's actually a very nice one too. It's 30-06, very well taken care of, and it has a synthetic stock with it, but unfortunately this one's really, really flexible. And the customer wanted me to rebarrel it because he's not hitting anything anymore. He believes he shot out his barrel. So he wanted me to rebarrel it and do a bedding job. And I asked him why he wanted the bedding job. And he said, well, this thing used to be a tack driver. And I often don't trust customers when they say that, because when they say tack driver, they mean they're hitting what they're shooting at. And that could be a 9-inch plate at 50 yards. This guy I know, I know he does a lot of shooting. I know he's been precision rifle shooting. So when he says that it used to be a tack driver, I actually trust him. And he says now he's hitting like 5-inch groups out of it, 3 to 5-inch groups. And I was like, well, okay, so that's a big shift, right? And nothing's changed. I mean, this is something he uses every year, and all of a sudden, nothing changed. Scope has been checked out. Scope rings have been checked out. I checked the crown on his barrel. Everything checks out across the board, but it's not grouping anymore. So he's had it for decades. So I agreed with him. His barrel is most likely shot out. I checked throat erosion, and yeah. So we're putting a new barrel on there for him. Got him a Lilja barrel, and we're going to machine it, and it's going to be really, really nice. It's going to have a nice threaded barrel on there. But I told him, I was like, you know what, bud? How about to save you some money, before we go trying to bed the synthetic stock, I'm going to have to inlet some aluminum and all that fun stuff because it's so flexible. I'm going to put aluminum in there if I bed it. I said, how about this? How about we do the barrel job first? We're going to go shoot it, test fire it with the new barrel. And if it's still not to your liking, then we'll talk about bedding. Maybe we'll talk about a different stock. Maybe we'll talk about a lightweight hunting featherweight fiberglass stock, and we could bed that. Like I'd rather get away from this synthetic stock if we're going to mess with bedding whatsoever. And he was very pleased that I was honest with him because he didn't even know what bedding was. Like he was honest. He was like, look, man, before I agree to anything, what does bedding actually do? So I explained it to him. And I said, I really think we're going to get the accuracy back with this new barrel. I really think that's what's going to happen. And if it doesn't, then we'll talk about bedding. We'll just take it little as we go. And he was very happy with that decision. And saved him some money, hopefully. And this barrel job is going to be pretty up there. It's this barrel job is taking a lot of work just because sourcing the proper contour has been a pain, let's say. I'm going to go on a little side tangent real quick. When you get a new barrel, guys, if you're thinking about getting a new barrel for your rifle and it's in a stock and you want to keep that stock, it means you got to find a barrel with the proper contour that will fit in that stock. Because recontouring a barrel is not the most time-effective thing. Okay, we can rebarrel. We can change dimensions. We can change the chamber area, or barrel shank, or barrel tenon, as we call it, multiple things. We can resize that to make it thinner. We can resize the muzzle. We can do a lot of things. Recontouring takes time, and that's a lot of billable hours, let's say. So I recommend really, really considering, talk to your gunsmith about a barreling job, guys. Barreling jobs are very common. It's not like this is this rare job. It's just something to consider. If you've got a one-off weird barrel, it may be really hard to make it fit in the stock that goes with that. Okay, with a new barrel. But anyways, we're gonna get back on topic. So we told you what bedding is, and I guess it's just me. It's so lonely here without the old wife to keep me balanced, keep me on track. Should have a guest here soon. Got one guy considering doing an episode. Got another one on standby. I need to give him a call. He's going to be a Zoom guest. But, so, what are the pros and cons of these two options to help, reduce inaccuracy factors from your rifle, okay? First off, we're going to talk about the pros of doing a bedding job, all right? I think one of the most important things about bedding that is a pro is that it can be done to wood, some synthetic stocks, and fiberglass stocks. As I talked about synthetic, I was going to go into more detail, but I told you, some synthetic stocks I really just don't like to bed because of how flexible they are. The bedding compound is so much harder than the synthetic that a real good torque on it is going to really mess some things up. I like the fact that if you have a synthetic stock, a wood stock, or a fiberglass stock that you already really like you really like the way this stock looks or feels with this rifle, I think it's awesome that you can keep that look and you can keep that stock while improving the overall accuracy by reducing inaccuracy factors. Bedding is great for hunting rifles. It's great for beautiful, full custom rifles, that are in awesome, classic, American stocks with really beautiful wood. That's something that I think is no longer appreciated as much as it should. Like a full custom rifle where, you gave your gunsmith an action, he picked a barrel out for you, and he got a block of wood and made you a custom stock, and it's gorgeous, right? That's an amazing, one-of-a-kind rifle just for you, and you can bed that. You can bed that, and you can't tell it's bedded from the outside. It doesn't mess with the look whatsoever, and it really maximizes how much accuracy you're getting out of this rifle, okay? I really think people should be looking at custom rifles more often because you can, you're customizing it just for you. Your length of pull, your cast off, where it sits, the way the stock sits, maybe cast out a little bit or cast in. That's hard to describe. If you're listening to the podcast, instead of watching, cast off or cast in is interesting. It's just the way that the vertical plane of the stock up against your shoulder, how it sits. Maybe the bottom kicks out a little bit towards your shoulder and arm, or maybe your body type prefers that it kicks in a little bit more towards your chest. It's really interesting, and you'll be blown away when you grab a rifle that's made just for you and your body shape, how much better it feels than a commercial rifle off the shelf. That's something that's awesome. And the fact that you can have all that awesome stuff and bed it and have this just dead ringer of a rifle that just suits you and fits you and is literally a one-of-a-kind to you, that is so underappreciated, guys. It's so cool. That's something that's I can tell you from personal experience, I have a custom rifle that I made just for me. It feels great. It's kind of like when you, I don't know, I can't compare it to, what else can you get that's fully custom just for you? Maybe your car. Maybe you're someone who really likes cars and, you bought a scrapper or a wrecked vehicle and you built it just for you. It's one of a kind, It feels good. Like, it feels unique and it feels, I don't know, peaceful almost. So don't pass up on that idea that you can have. That's one of the pros of betting is you can really, if you got something that you don't want to screw up, let's say you already got one, and you're like, man, I wish I could push a little bit better accuracy out of this thing. Well, betting job, 100%. I wouldn't even think about getting a chassis for it. Just bet it, right? It's also cheaper than chassis systems by a dramatic margin. It's great for improving a rifle for someone who can't afford to purchase an expensive chassis system. Right. So, for example, let's take some guy named John, and John is beginning to get into precision rifle shooting, but hasn't dove in all the way. He's dipping his toes, right? He's just thinking about it. Well, if John's got a really good rifle that already works really well for him, let's say he's got a rifle that's shooting 1 MOA, right on the line, 1 MOA with some good ammo, not even hand loads. Remember, John is new. This John guy, he's new. He just wants to dip his toes into it and see how he likes it. Well, if he wants to try to push a little bit better accuracy, he's got a good scope, let's say, I would bed the rifle for him. And then maybe John goes and does some precision rifle shooting and, doesn't get into it. Goes, yeah, that was fun. Well, he's not $1,000 into a chassis, deep into this hobby that he actually didn't pick up on. He tried it out, didn't like it. Or maybe he does like it. Maybe that helps him afford to play with it before he dove head in, right? Someone who's just dipping their toes, trying some things out, doesn't need to break the bank just to try out a potential hobby. Obviously if you're going to professional competitions, it's a different story. But this John guy, he just wants to try it, right? He just wants to push the boundaries of his rifle a little more. And that's perfect for that. One more thing that betting I think is great for is if you're someone who goes hunting out west or maybe in Canada or Alaska or any of those places where you actually go out there and you hike for a good while, maybe you cover 10 miles in a day scouting and tracking or whatever you're doing, right? Especially mountain goat hunting, all these things that you're crossing a lot of terrain. You're saving pounds and ounces where you can, so you've already got a lightweight rifle. Well, if you've already got a lightweight rifle, and you want to boost the accuracy of that because you're taking some long shots compared to most tree stand hunters, you don't want a chassis. You just don't, because you're lugging this thing across miles of terrain for maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, right? Giving it a bedding job, not really costing you much weight, You might add an ounce or two in the aluminum pillars, if that. These things are light. So It's really good for keeping a lightweight rifle that you're already using lightweight, right? Like you're not hurting. You're adding let's say you're removing inaccuracy, but for the sake of the argument, you're adding accuracy without adding weight, and it's really good for that. But like everything, like Glock that we talked about last week, everything has a downside. Okay, everything has a downside. One of the biggest ones for bedding is it's not an easy process for the average gun owner. I highly recommend that you let a gunsmith do the job. Okay, this is not something that I recommend the average gun owner just go out and try to do on one of their own rifles, because it's not like, the adult Lego AR-15. It seems simple when you look at a bolt-action rifle and you go, well, there's a barreled action, there's bottom metal, and there's 2 action screws. How could I mess it up? It's actually a very involved process. It's very time-consuming, let's put it that way. There's time invested in it. And if you're not a detail-oriented person, I do not recommend it. I heard someone, I don't know if it was on YouTube or if it was a friend of mine, who said, if the person doing the job was the kind of person who got really frustrated trying to put models together as a kid, like model tanks or whatever, this is not for them. If that frustrated them, this is not for them. You need to be really detail-oriented when you're doing this, okay? So, but taking it back, if you are someone who is very detail-oriented, you work well under time constraints and stress, and you're fine really figuring things out and doing the research beforehand, then do it, okay? This is definitely something you can figure out if you're really driven and focused, and you're willing to do the research ahead of time, create a list, an order of operations on how to do things, and you pay attention to the details. It can be done, okay? And you can save yourself a little bit of money as opposed to going to a gunsmith. However, the supplies needed to do the bedding job, actually, it's not a substantial financial investment, but it's definitely not something that you don't, it's not $15, right? You're gonna put some money into this bedding job, but then a lot of the supplies can be used a couple times. So maybe if you figure it out, you can bed 3 of your rifles, right? And you're not paying for everything 3 times. It's a one-time investment for maybe. It depends on what size you get for bedding compound. Like if you get the regular Acroglass product, which is like, I forget how many ounces that is. I can never remember the ounces. There's 2 different sizes from what I remember. There's a really big one that will honestly go bad before you could actually use it all. But the little one, you could probably get, I think, 5 or 6 bedding jobs done with that product. So if you're interested, do the research, guys. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. I'd be very picky with who you listen to. Do not listen to the Bubbas on YouTube. I really recommend listening to the Gunsmiths on YouTube. I've watched a lot of these videos myself back before I went to gunsmithing school. And there are some guys out there that don't know what they're talking about. And you can tell when they get their finished product out and it looks like junk. And I can already tell right off the bat, it's not going to shoot worth a crap. They've actually hurt their rifle. And that's something I'm going to bring up as a con is if the bedding job is not done 100% correctly, it can actually hurt the accuracy as opposed to help. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to correct, okay? This stuff hardens. It mechanically and chemically binds to the surfaces of the, let's say, wood or fiberglass. Getting it out, near impossible, okay? Think about the idea that you just basically put steel or a super hard nylon and welded it or fused it to your stock, okay? It's got to be done right the first time. The only time I actually got really lucky, I was trying out this other product on a really dumb project of mine that I've wasted a lot of money and time in. I normally use Acroglass for bedding jobs, but I had a colleague of mine recommend DevCon, which is a different brand, and they make products that they advertise as liquid steel or liquid plastic steel or plastic steel putty. There's a couple of different products they make, and the mixing ratio of hardener to the regular I forget what the compound's called. When you mix them, they harden over time. The ratio is different. A lot of products are 1-to-1, so you just mix them equally and go to town. However, this product was like 1-to-6, and we thought we mixed the right amount. We thought we measured it properly, and we tried to bed the rifle, and 24 hours later, the stuff still hadn't hardened. So I looked at the instructions, and it said, give it 24 to 48 hours to fully harden. I was like, all right, maybe I'm just taking on the long side. I'll see what I can do. It never hardened. The hardener we put in there, we didn't put enough of it in there, so I was kind of screwed. So I spent about 5 hours picking this stuff out of this stock. I was really lucky. It was not, if I had messed up and had the right amount of hardener in there and I had to take it out, that's good luck, dude. Might as well just throw the stock away. But I got lucky, and this stuff never fully cured, which means it hadn't fully fused itself to the wood. So I was able to spend a lot of painstaking time digging this stuff out and separating it from the wood. And then I re-bedded it with Acroglass, and that did the job. So really pay attention to detail, guys. Like I said, it can be messed. I'm a gunsmith, and I messed it up. Luckily, it was my own project, and it was my first time using this different product, and it just didn't get the mixture right. It can be done. Like I said, if you really pay attention and you're really driven, you can do it at home. And in fact, if any viewers whatsoever want to see a different video than what's already available on YouTube on how to bed a rifle, I'd be glad to make one. I just, let me know. I need to make sure people would watch it. I'm not going to take the time and put all this effort into it with no interest. So show me some interest, and I will do it for you. I promise. So that's the downsides. The downsides is it's not easy, and if done incorrectly, it can really mess up a rifle, okay, or a stock. Actually, technically, it can mess up a rifle itself, the barreled action, if you don't put a release agent. When you actually, while it's curing, or as soon as you get it in the stock, you actually place the rifle, the barreled action, into the stock to press and take the shape it needs to take. And if you don't put release agent on the barreled action, it'll actually fuse itself to the metal too, and you don't want to try to separate bedding compound from a rifle that didn't get release agent. It might as well just be one giant block at that point. So what are the pros of the chassis system? Well, it's actually, once again, the chassis system is very simple, guys. It's much higher range of modularity. That's the number one for me. If I was doing precision rifle shooting and I needed modularity, like the ability to reposition the bipod, the ability to maybe fold the stock or change the pistol grip out, or even change the stock out, there's a wide range of chassis systems for the most common of rifles, okay? That modularity is awesome. You can get stuff that has M-lock rails on there. You can get stuff that's got interchangeable pistol grips, interchangeable stocks. I mean, modularity is awesome. And, in the modern times, with AR-15s being the most common rifle out there, it makes sense that you would carry over that modularity to your bolt actions as well. And the option to use removable magazines is really nice too. I know a lot of guns can be, switched over to removable detachable magazines without getting a chassis system, but a lot of these chassis systems come, ready for the removable magazine instead of the internal magazine. So that's obviously a nice plus. Okay. Quicker reloads, not loading things individually into that magazine. It's very nice. Some chassis can actually still be bedded. I think technically you can bed any chassis. Only a few that I know of actively ask you not to. But that comes down to how precise is their machining, guys. It comes down to you and the individual chassis you got. It might be easier and cheaper for you to actually just warranty out your chassis if the mating surfaces aren't, if they're bad enough to where you need to bed them. I would most likely just warranty it out, because these things are expensive, guys. That's one of the downsides. We'll get to that. I don't think you should be bedding a chassis just because you're paying for a precision machined stock replacement. Okay, this thing should not need bedding. But just like anything else that's produced in a factory with machining, there are tolerances allowed, and there are quality control things that just happen, guys. Not every quality control person is going to catch 100% of the issues. So if you get one of these things, instead of just going, oh, I don't feel like waiting for it, I'm just going to go ahead and bet it, I'd really consider just getting the warranty, okay? If this thing doesn't come with a warranty, you're paying way too much, okay? If you're going to pay $1,000 and not get a warranty, well, we got some issues. And the last pro I could think of is that it's just extremely easy to swap to. Like, you just, action screws pretty much. It's very simple to swap it out, just like swapping any other stock out. So there are pros to the chassis, but there are definite downsides. Man, the number one downside for me is 90% of the time they are outrageously expensive. And I'm not blaming them. Like, I'm not saying they're overcharging for these things. If you look at them, they're very intricately machined. And guys, CNC machines are expensive. Programmers for these machines are expensive to pay, okay? This stuff takes effort and time. So do not get me wrong. I do not think they're overpriced most of the time. I just think that they're expensive. And if you're a poor like me, you can't afford it. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. Now, a lot of times you can do some financing, which is nice. If you're really wanting to get into precision rifle shooting, I think it's worth it, guys. I think a chassis is great, especially with the modularity. I like it. But they're expensive. And from my experience, they're also much heavier than your average stock. In fact, they're heavier than most stocks. Okay, that's a lot of metal. You got a metal stock, a metal frame. It's a lot of aluminum. I mean, you can find lightweight chassis. And like I said, I've seen some that are a mixture of materials. But a lot of the ones I see are just mostly aluminum, solid aluminum. So, I mean, they're heavy. Aluminum is heavier than most wood, right? So, and most definitely synthetic, and most fiberglass as well. I mean, you're really adding some weight there. So this is not something that I would get for like a hunting rifle. I would only use it for precision rifle shooting. If you're going to lug it around a lot, the chassis is not the best idea. These chassis are heavy. Once again, I know if you're just, oh, it's not that heavy. No, it's heavier, right? Like, you're adding weight. It's aluminum, dude. You're adding weight. I know a lot of these guys, they cut them to save weight. So like I said earlier, your stocks will be cut like crazy. So it's very minimalized, very skeleton-esque. And in fact, most of these chassis are skeletonized throughout to save as much weight as possible, but it's still heavy, right? It's still heavier. I'm not saying it's a 240 Bravo. It's not a machine gun heavy, but it's definitely heavier than your average stock. Just something to think about, guys. Not telling you not to get one. Just saying it's something to think about. I really like bedding. Guys, I really think bedding is one of those underappreciated gunsmith services that chassis have taken the forefront of people's minds in replacement lately. And like I said, there's definitely a place for chassis, and chassis are awesome. It's just that bedding can really help someone out when they can't afford a chassis. It's just, and bedding takes a place in a lot of areas where the chassis doesn't apply. Like, I don't want a chassis for a mountain hunting rifle. I need a lightweight stock, dude. I need a thin barrel. I'm taking one shot. I don't need many. I don't need a heavy barrel for heat dissipation. You really need a lightweight stock. Take that one shot and hope it matters. And bedding's great for that. Bedding's great for someone on a budget who's testing out, dipping their toes into precision rifle shooting. Bedding's great, guys. In my idea, if I was like just playing around with having a really nice rifle, if I had to just think, like, if I could make, I still want to do a Model 70 of my own at some point. And I think it'd be great to have in the Macmillan A4 stock with a bedding job. I mean, that would just be awesome. It just sounds like a great combination. I don't know if the A4 fits. Maybe it's the A5. One of them fits the Model 70. I forget. But a nice fiberglass stock with a bedding job and a good rifle, man. It just sounds, nice. My custom rifle that I built for myself, one of the custom rifles that I built for myself out of the walnut stock, is just a Remington 700. It's the basic 700, but it's got a precision machined. Okay. It's got a Douglas barrel that I precision machined to fit that receiver. Blueprinted it, everything, the whole 9 yards. and it's pillar bedded, and it's just awesome, man. I almost refuse to shoot it. I still haven't gotten a grouping out of it because I'm like, it's so pretty. I don't want to shoot it. But see, you know what's weird is every other firearm in my collection has been shot and gets shot. This is the one that I'm just considering not shooting. It's just so pretty. It's like a resume rifle, you know, it's just to show it off. I'm scared if I take it to the range, I'm going to scuff that beautiful wooden finish. And I don't want to do that. So I have the other rifle that I've put a ton of time and energy into. That's just been driving me insane. It's the dang 1903 A3. And that's getting its own video series made. It's been just a nightmare. Just a nightmare, guys. If any of you are playing around with the idea of gunsmithing and you're working on some machining jobs or you're thinking you can do, you know, your own cool project, don't be like me. Don't think you're going to get a 1903 A3 and build this amazing custom rifle no one else has that'll be a precision rifle. Okay? You're getting in over your head and you're going to regret it. And you're going to be over $1,000 into it before you realize that you either have to give up and just take the L or just stay stubborn and keep going like me. I built a Springfield 1903 A3 and I precision machined a Krieger heavy Palma profile barrel for it. Just awesome barrel. And I had to do a lot of shaping to the receiver and bolt. And then I put it in the only stock that is made for that rifle on the internet. I'll let you guys figure that out. I don't want to admit what brand it is because it's not good quality stock. But it was all I could get. And I bedded it. And I took it to the range. And I got a 0.3 inch group out of it. And couldn't repeat it. Couldn't figure out why. And then realized the stock wouldn't stay free floated. And that's a conversation for another time. Maybe I'll do a whole episode on my Nightmare 1903. I don't know. I'll consider it. You guys let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode, guys. I'm not telling you bedding or chassis, one or the other, because they apply to different scenarios and different points in your life or your firearms experience or your hobbies. It all depends on what you're doing with it and, you know, what situation you're in. So there's no yes or no. There's just, you know, per situation. Okay. So if you enjoyed it today, please leave a review, guys. If you're on the podcast sites, it would help us out so much. But I do appreciate y'all for, you know, I can tell you're sharing with your friends already. Cause like I said, we're doubling our downloads every month. I mean, February to May, doubled it. I'm hoping, or not February to May. Man, I'm bad at months, guys. February to March. There we go. February to March, you guys doubled it. I'm hoping by the end of April, we're going to see another doubling, and that'd be great. So I really appreciate you. If you do want to help out, though, like I said, leave a review. If you're watching on YouTube because you know you like seeing me talk to myself in the room, TBR Gunworks, please subscribe. Maybe leave a comment, interact with us because we appreciate all of our listeners. You guys are awesome. You've been great. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at TBR Gunworks or tbrgunworks.com. And guys, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Remember, every single gun law is an infringement. Don't forget that. It's true. It is true. Every gun law is an infringement. Thank you so much for hanging out. Have a good rest of your week. Take care, guys.